And good evening. Tonight we'll preview the top races and ballot issues affecting Missouri and Illinois families.
And to analyze each race and issue, we're joined by our panel of contributors, KSDK political analyst Dave Robertson, host of Allman in the Morning on 97.1 FM, Jamie Allman, and a regular on the Donnybrook program, columnist Alvin Reed. And
we begin tonight with a look at the nation's political climate overall. Dave Robertson joins us. And Dave, if you look at the polls, what are people most concerned about? We know it's jobs and the economy. It's jobs and the economy. And with that in mind, and with the Democrats in charge, the polls indicate the Republicans are going to have a big night tomorrow. What's your take?
Absolutely. The climate in the country is stormy. 60% of Americans think the country is going in the wrong direction, and it's clear that the economy and jobs are driving that pessimism.
So Dave, if the Republicans are going to have a big night, is that a mandate for Republicans, or is it a mandate for more change?
It's a mandate to fix the economy and for some new team to go on the field and try new plays to try to get the economy moving. It's a great deal of dissatisfaction. There's not a great deal of love lost for either Democrats or Republicans at this moment in the United States.
President Obama made a speech yesterday and said if the Democrats can get out the vote tomorrow as they did in 2008, all the pundits will be wrong. Are you buying into that?
Well, if that were true, then he might have a point, but I don't think that's going to be the case. In a midterm election, the members of the opposite party are usually more energized. That's absolutely clear in this election. Members of the president's party tend to be a little more passive, a little more discouraged. So it's very normal for presidents to lose a couple of dozen seats in the House of Representatives in the first midterm after they're elected. This election, however, because there's so much dissatisfaction, probably is going to look a lot more like 1994 when the president's party lost over 50 seats.
All right, Dave Robertson, thanks very much. We'll check back for more perspective in just a few minutes.
And closer to home, we begin with the race to run.
Sharon Stevens, News Channel 5.
Has been provided.
Now, in addition to Quinn and Brady, the governor's race includes Green candidate Rich Whitney, Independent Scott Lee Cohn, and Libertarian Lex Green. Now, for further analysis, let's turn again to Dave Robertson. Dave, will the lasting effects of the Blagojevich scandal affect this race in any way? I mean, Quinn was his lieutenant governor, even though Blagojevich said he was not part of the administration.
Well, I think this is an election in a state where people are incredibly fed up with government, and they're facing such a terrible budget crisis that it's very difficult to see how they're going to get out of the crisis without a lot of pain. And you can see the ripples of this throughout this race. People are unhappy, I think, with both choices and are going to have to hold their nose, I think, when they cast a ballot tomorrow.
It's not often these days that a candidate says we should raise taxes and then be taken seriously, which is what Pat Quinn did early on in this race. And they're both talking about balancing the federal budget or balancing the state budget. Can that actually be done without raising taxes?
I think they'll find it very difficult. I think Brady will do everything he can to stop the legislature from pushing any kind of an increase in spending that would increase the budget deficit or not subtract from it, so that he can keep his promise not to raise taxes. Quinn is saying what the people of Illinois want to hear, that you can increase you can lower the budget deficit without cutting those services everybody treasures, like education, like health care. The proof is in the pudding. It's going to be very difficult for either candidate to actually find specific ways to get to their goal.
All right, and it could be a long night for both those candidates, Brady versus Quinn tomorrow. Dave, we'll check back a little later. Thanks very much.
And our election preview.
Kathleen Berger, News Channel 5.
Dave Robertson joins us now with more on what has been a bitter race for the U.S. Senate. Dave, the polls showing these candidates 2 percentage points apart, everything from mobs, lies, and bike racks being debated in this race. It's really been something to watch.
Yeah, we've been treated in St. Louis to 2 negative ads, 2 sets of Senate races that are very negative. In this race, Republicans thought they had a moderate who could win the hearts and minds of Illinois voters in Mark Kirk. Giannoulis has run a strong campaign in the sense of keeping up with Kirk, so it's anybody's race at this point. Kirk probably has the advantage of a tide toward the Republicans. Giannoulis has the advantage of being in a very Democratic state.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave.
And our election preview special will return after this with a look at Proposition.
Jennifer Blome, News Channel 5.
So let's turn to Dave Robertson once again. This has become a hot-button issue in Missouri. At first, the way the issue was portrayed in ads left many voters saying to themselves, how could you say no to stopping puppy mills? Is it that simple, Dave?
Well, it's more complex than that. It regulates puppy mills, but the opponents say it won't be that effective, and it may drive some puppy mills underground where they can't be checked as easily as they would be otherwise. Proponents insist that it's critically important to establish these standards to bring Missouri, the leading dog breeding state in the country, up to a standard that is humane and respectable. One of the concerns about this is whether or not the other kinds of animals in the state, farm animals, for example, will be regulated by another step in these regulations of the way animals are kept and the way that they're raised. That, I think, is a big concern in outstate Missouri. This is one of those issues that divides the urban areas and the rural areas a little bit.
But from the polling we've seen for both Proposition B and Proposition A, we see overwhelming victories for yes votes. Is that your take on it?
I think they are very, very strong favorites, both to win strong majorities tomorrow.
All right, Dave Robertson, thanks again.
And our election preview special will
bring to the polls. So now we are rejoined by our panel, Dave Robertson, Jamie Allman, Alvin Reed. Dave, let me start with you. What do you expect? Just an overall gut feeling about what's going to happen tomorrow.
A lot of frustration in the electorate. Big year for the Republicans. Your vote matters. Get out and vote, because turnout is going to determine some of the close races that we talked about tonight.
And Jamie and Alvin, let's bring you guys in there. Jamie, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow? And will St. Louis and St. Louis County look any different than perhaps the rest of the nation?